And we are live. A little bit 33 seconds before time, just to compensate. Welcome to the podcast, The Coaches Next Door, and one more Friday. And this podcast is coming now on Fridays at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, Amsterdam time. And our idea when we decided to put this workshop, sorry, I mean, my mind is in a workshop. When we decided to put the podcast on this time and this day, was exactly with the idea of bringing, first of all, a little bit of awareness about the week, and also to give you a little bit of a moment to do a kind of introspection to what happened during the week. Hello. Um, and also to give you some opportunity to go to the next week with a different frame, with a different perspective, or even with really change. And that's the magic, that sometimes we tend to think that change takes time. And yes, I can accept that some changes, they will need some time. But the truth is that a lot of changes, they will not need time. They will need other stuff, like sometimes discipline, sometimes wanting, sometimes help. Okay, but the idea is very much established in the world that change always requires a lot of time. That's not true, or not necessarily true. And we also get a little bit, or we allow that change takes time. Because again, we believe that change needs time. And I always say this, how many times you change in a matter of seconds? How many times you thought in a different way? You even did physically something very different from whatever you believe you could do in a frame of seconds. I'm going to give you an example. Today I was, so I do functional training. It's a lot of with weight, but also but the main goal is to really to give my body some more muscle, because I have hypermobility. And I received the advice, because with age my um, hypermobility was getting more intense, so it's more probability of me getting hurt, or getting in positions that are not so helpful for me. Yeah, because of that. So I'm doing this training, and today, like always, it's always a moment that my PT really challenges me. Um, and I was doing an exercise, and I gave up. I don't know. I think I did 3 reps, three. And I gave up. And it's like, okay, that's not what I was expecting. But what happened? So I was explaining, and he said, "Oh, okay. So let's use that. Let's use that." And I, from 3 reps and not really going for it, he said to me, "Okay, let's use that. Let's use the movement that you are integrating without Notion, and that and let's put that in the exercise." So from not doing it to, okay, stopping, like maybe not even a minute, to doing the exercise in a totally different way, with more movement even. So the funny thing is that for most part of the people, that will be more difficult, end up being the way that for me works better. So how many times this happens to us, right? Yes, muscle building. And it's working. I'm very happy. um, But the thing is that how many times we had a situation that we even didn't believe and we changed. So I want to also bring to you this idea that change doesn't need time, or not necessarily, so that you also can get a little bit more curious if this can change can come in different ways and in different forms. Exactly, change is not linear. So I want to bring that also in this podcast and during this time that we are going to be together. The topic of today is a very particular topic because I'm receiving a lot of things, and this is the season. People saying to me, "Oh, Ligia, I'm going back to my parents," and or I'm going even back to my home country because you know that I work a lot with internationals. So, and they're like, "Okay, I'm afraid that all the work that I did is not going. I'm afraid that something is going to happen, or sometimes even happens. Like people go back to that context, and suddenly they say, "Wow." So many years after and so much work done, and I'm still here. I'm still reacting in this way with this aunt or this uncle or my mom or my dad or whatever, or even a friend, or even sometimes the environment, right? The city that you go back, or the country that you go back. Because yeah, I can say that for myself. When I go back to Portugal, um, I'm in a tourist mode for maybe, I don't know, maybe 2 weeks. And then kicks in again that I was raised there. So, and I start, like, I now remember why I went out. And that's okay. That's okay. But that happens, right? I think happens with all of us in certain ways, in certain moments. But the thing is that sometimes we tend to see these little triggers as ghosts. Like, oh my God, here I go again. I need to, go for more therapy, or I need to go to another coach, or I need to go whatever. Or, oh, do I need to, to heal all my childhood? And so it becomes big. That's what I want to say, is that those triggers, and particularly this ones with family, and that takes you back to an an old version of yourself that is not so old because it's still being triggered, but you know what I mean. So it takes you to a place that you go like, okay, I went out of here already, so why I'm going back to this place. um and the idea is much more about how can I use these triggers to really promote change, instead of, okay, I'm going to deal with the trigger, or I'm going to, I know that I'm going back to my house, or I'm going back to the country that I live right now, or I'm going out of this situation, and then I will see what happens. I will say, do the change there, because one of the things that we know is that all the work that we do with people, of course, or with ourselves, tends to work better on a real situation. So sometimes even we in coaching, we ask the person that we are working with, say, hey, wait that this situation comes to you to use the tools that you just got. So, and sometimes even we wait that the circumstances is there to see how was the reaction and what happened, right? If something different was done. So if you are already feeling the trigger, that is the perfect moment to use, is the perfect moment to change. And of course, I'm talking about triggers that you don't appreciate, okay? Because you can be triggered in very nice ways. So, for instance, when I go and I feel, the smell of the cooking, specifically a dessert that my mom does. I go like, oh my God, I'm home, and I'm glad that I'm here. So I'm talking about triggers that you think, okay, I want to let go of this trigger because this is not um, something that is serving me. Yes, that's a trigger. The trigger is exactly that. Is when you receive something, a stimulus, can be external or internal, and you immediately get a response from your system, and can be a thought, can be even sometimes a physical response, right? An emotional response. That is exactly a trigger. And it's, yeah, I understand, is without judgment, is easier saying it than doing it, right? We all know that. So it's much more difficult to look to the trigger without judging the trigger, because yeah, the trigger is already happening and we are involved in the trigger. But yes, that is one of the ways to really deal with the trigger, is gaining that distance, from the trigger. Let me put it this way. Okay, so the first thing to do, like you can imagine, is identifying the trigger. And formally, we talk about this, about awareness and calibration. So it's like, okay, I'm feeling it, and getting more clarity you have about the trigger, easier to promote the change, right? So it's important to notice is if it's in a word, if it's in a non-verbal, if it's in the environment where you are, and how are you being triggered. And the best way sometimes to do this in terms of calibration is saying, okay, what was the sense that got more, this trigger? So it was something that I saw, was something that I heard, or was something that I felt in my body, or even something that I sat. Yeah. So realizing from where the trigger came, what was the sense that was more called through this trigger, is a great way to promote that change already. Okay. And then when I get like, oh, was something that I heard, or for something I saw, and then we can start getting in the sense of, okay, when I saw that, when I heard that, what was immediately my behavior? So what was the emotions that I felt, and what was the thing that I did? So this getting more awareness about what it is, the trigger. And the trigger, I know that sometimes people say, oh, but is a thing. I get triggered and it's like becomes a thing. That is what happens in this behavior. Okay, when you get on this sense of overwhelming already, sometimes it's already a behavior. So you need really to go back and saying, okay, what exactly happened for me to feel like this? And the beauty of this is that when you get the sense that was more received the biggest stimulus, then you can operate in a very high level of change. Okay, we are not looking only for the change on the behavior, even if that is already pretty good. But when we are looking for the sense that received the biggest stimulus, we are getting a very high information about ourselves. Okay. And that's the thing, is that the more you know yourself, the more possibilities you have. For instance, I can use a very personal example. I don't, I really don't like people tapping me on the back. I really don't like, you know. And I could spend, I don't know, times and getting the sense, okay, what this means and how I want to change this trigger. And I like, no, I just say to people, can you please stop that? Because I know that in the first, when I feel the first tap, I go like, can you please stop that? And the person normally stops. They say, I'm sorry. I say, it's okay. I just really don't like it. Or sometimes when I feel, and I have a very close relationship with the person, I say, please don't tap me. Don't go like, and they don't do it. So that was a change, because before, what I will be doing is like, people were doing it, and then I will process that myself. But guess what? They already did it. So I was already, you know, triggered by that. And then I like, now I need to go through myself and clean up all this. And it's like, why? Why? Sometimes the change is saying, can we not do that? Can we stop that? Can you stop that? I don't like it. And sometimes acting as anticipation, because sometimes you, for instance, if someone, that happens sometimes, okay? So, for instance, we are in a group of friends and someone is hugging someone before me, and I see this person doing that. I already let him know that when he comes to hug me, that I like, okay, don't tap. I don't like it. Because that is another thing, is that sometimes when we have a lot of tools, and we say, okay, you know what, doesn't matter, then I solve that for myself. Why? Because is a place that you can get really tired, okay, and you don't need to do that all by yourself if you can already anticipate why you will let yourself be triggered. Yeah. um, and this also reflects this idea that I think is very important, and we tend to, repeat this, is when we get triggered, the best thing to do, because we need to separate the response from the stimulus, right? So we receive the stimulus and we want more time to decide what will be our response. That will be an enormous change already. Like, the trigger is coming, I'm getting the trigger, but I'm not using the strategy or the behavior that I'm used to. Okay. So when we want to anticipate, create this space between the stimulus and the response, so we want to separate them, one of the best things to do is disassociate from that moment, that person, or even from, sometimes it's even possible from what we are feeling. Because if you get that observation about what you're feeling, that is already a way for you to disassociate. That you got like a little bit of a distance looking and saying, okay, what is happening here? So, one of the ways of doing this is literally closing up, your system. Because again, let's go back. You are being triggered by a stimulus, and most probably, a lot of times, the stimulus comes from an outside. Okay. So, the best thing to do for us to gain distance is literally to shut down a little bit the possibility of more triggers to enter. So everything that is connected with your senses will help you out. So what sometimes I do, I just close my eyes. I go like, okay. And I'm not seeing anymore this person. Or sometimes I even sometimes, cover a little bit my ears and like, okay, let me gain some space here. Because is necessary, that going inside, okay, and checking, okay, what is this all about? And then of course the question, what do I want to do with this? But if you don't shut down, can even be that the trigger continues, right? So the person continues talking, the person continues tapping, the person continues, the environment continues there. So it's interesting that it's allowed. You can shut down. So shutting down sometimes is doing this. Yeah, I hear, I'm here, I'm talking, I'm hearing you, and then I take a step back and I'm observing what is going on, not only there, but also with me. And sometimes my clients already know that I do this. When sometimes I'm doing a coaching session, I go like, okay, 1 minute, and I go inside. And this is not because, of course, I'm being triggered, but because I want that space between what I just heard and what can I, when I can, where can I be a support, or if I can do an exercise or whatever. So it's okay. We don't need, and I think this is also something that we tend to believe, that we need to be always, on. And that's not necessary. It's not necessary, it's not healthy, I would say. So, and more, some people need more this than others. But it's okay. You can allow yourself to shut down sometimes and say, okay, you know what? I need a little bit of a minute. And almost like saying to yourself, I need here a minute. And even you don't need to say it to the other person. If you want, you can also. But you don't need to. It's just making sure that you are a little bit on a observer position. And that when you are disassociated, when you distance yourself, when you are just are observing yourself having that trigger, you're going to receive a lot of information. You're going to receive a lot of information about your own behavior. You are going to get maybe more clarity about what was exactly the thing that happened there. And of course, knowing more about this will also help you to take decision about if you want to change that trigger, or if you want to change what you do with that trigger. Because you don't need, or I will say you even cannot, but it's not that every trigger, first, you cannot be without triggers in this world. Second, if it's a trigger that really affects you, you don't need always to work upon the trigger. You know what I mean? So you don't need to change, even if you can. You don't need to change the trigger. You sometimes just need to change the strategy, the response that you get to that for that trigger, right? Even if, for instance, when we do, if you know a little bit about neuro-linguistic programming, you can interfere on the trigger. You can interfere on the memory that created this trigger. Okay, but it's not always necessary. It's not always necessary. Sometimes this is enough. Saying, okay, I'm going to do something different here. I'm going to change the behavior and the response that I get to this trigger. So that is very interesting, because I think it's also a lot of pressure, yes, to be able to observe rather than react. Exactly that. Exactly that. So you want to have more space, okay, between the stimulus and the response that it will give to the stimulus. And what I was saying is that I think it's a lot of pressure these days to, oh, let's work on your triggers. And like, first, you cannot know them all. Never. because when you think like, oh, this one is gone, poof, another one, another one kicks in. So like I already said here, I think was the last podcast, that last episode, sorry. um, Triggers are the signal that your system is working well. Okay, we don't want anyone numb. We don't want anyone all the time disassociated, that suddenly is in this life just as an observer. So we want to be triggered. We want to receive the stimulus. We want to receive stimulus from the outside, from the inside. Triggers are, I'm going to repeat this because I think this is important. Triggers are a healthy response from your system to the world. Okay, so it's important to keep them. Don't go around trying to remove all the triggers in the world. It's not possible, it's not healthy. Okay, disclaimer made. So another thing that I think is important to realize is that um, a trigger, so when you receive the stimulus, um, this is just the primary thing that is going to happen is that your senses receive this stimulus, and then it's happening on your body. Okay, and then goes to your mind, and that mind is going to create a meaning for it. So another way that we can operate with triggers is reframing. Okay, I already spoke a lot about reframing in other episodes, but I will come back to it because it's so important. Because when you have a trigger, normally, and this also connects with the idea that I think sometimes people say in a very subtle way, don't have triggers, go around the world without being triggered. And like, that is not, I'm going to repeat it, is not healthy. And I think a lot of this also brings a meaning, a very nasty meaning to triggers. So every time that I feel like I got this stimulus, I tend to I don't they got, but I see a lot of people, yeah, just like we were saying before, judging these triggers, right? Saying, oh, I need to work more on this. Maybe I still need to, forgive, and my father or my mom or my aunt or whatever. And it's like, why are we giving triggers the meaning that they are bad? For instance, a new meaning, triggers are asking us to look at something. Thank you. And that's the thing, is that if we think that triggers are asking for us to look for something, or to look at something, it's very different that I think, oh, triggers means that I still need to work on myself. And even I will challenge if triggers are asking anything. Triggers are us being humans, is our system. Yes, we can look at triggers. Yes, exactly. That's what I want to say, is that triggers are a good thing. Triggers is me being super healthy. I'm a healthy person because I'm around. I'm getting connected with the world. I'm sometimes getting connected with people, sometimes even with nature, and that's good. That is good for me. And it's even good that I receive the stimulus and that stimulus does something to me, instead of always trying to control, because I think this all comes by the idea that we need to control our stuff. Okay. For example, I'm going to give an example. I don't mind. I'm not a weather person. So let's say if it's raining, it's raining. If it's sun, it's sun. And I like, okay, if you ask me if I prefer, okay, I have some preferences, but I don't get, over the weather or something like that. But it's one particular thing that really affects me is wind. And yes, I live I live in the Netherlands. So that's today was one of those days, one of those mornings that was a very strong wind. And I really feel my sometimes even I get a little bit of a fuzzy head, like my head, I have more difficulties to concentrate. Um and I don't personally appreciate being in the wind. Not even if it's a sunny day. For instance, if it's we are at the beach and still wind, I prefer to go home. I don't really appreciate it. My body doesn't really likes it. And if you ask me, if maybe you are thinking, oh wow, Ligia, come on, you could be doing something about it. Yeah, probably, but I don't want to. I'm okay. I'm okay with saying, the wind disturbs me. And sometimes even I get a little bit like, wow, fascinated how a thing can create so much impact on me. And I get fascinated about that. And I go like, wow, this is really fascinating. And I go a little bit on on my lab, my personal lab, and realizing what does to me. What is how do I feel it? Is my head, is my body, what happens here? So I get myself in the student mode, like studying myself, and I let it go, I let it be, I let that exist, because I don't have any intentions of controlling the wind, but I also don't want to control everything about myself. um and I find this, now that I'm here saying this, I realize that most part of the times we are getting a lot of pressure about this, right? We need to control ourselves. We need to know what the response will be. We need to know what this is all about. And then people call it a lot of names. People, oh, you have a trauma. I said, who cares? Like, that's not relevant. So I think we sometimes go too far on this, idea that we should not be humans. I'm a very big fan of all our biggest progress, our biggest personal development is to become more humans, not to become less human. So being triggered is an amazing thing, because not only you learn a lot about yourself and what is important for you, what matters, right? And I think that you get triggered because matters, and maybe that is the change, realizing that the biggest change, saying, okay, if I'm getting triggered, this matters. So this matters. How this matters, and what this matters means to me. And if this matters, maybe I'm going to do something about it. It matters to me. For instance, I'm going to share something with you. I don't remember in my childhood. I don't remember to ever had comments about the way that I looked, or my weight, or anything like that. Um, and the other day, I was with a person, and my middle daughter was eating candies, and the person said, "Oh, careful! You are going to be fat." And I looked at the person and I said, "Don't say that kind of things. That's not something to say." And the person like, "Oh, but yeah, that happens." I'm like, "No, you are not going to say that, because guess what? That matters for me. I don't want anyone to say that to my daughter. So that matters for me." And I got triggered, and I go like, I paused a little bit, like, no, I will not let it go. And my response was saying, like, hey, don't say that to my daughter. So, and I think sometimes we don't realize that trigger, when we get trigger, seems like is something there that matters. Okay, so imagine that you give this meaning instead of I need to work upon this, or I need to pay attention to something. Is just saying, oh, something here matters, something here. And probably, if it's like, again, we are talking more about the triggers that we tend to react a little bit more strongly. um, I think that is because they are smashing our personal values, right? uh, and oh yeah, she was projecting big time. Big time. Someone is saying that's her experience and she's projecting it on your daughter. Oh yeah, big time, big time. So, and maybe, I don't know if it's even experience, it's experience maybe what she heard about it, right? I don't know if she ever felt like that herself. um, Let me just see a message. Could maybe others' expectations of us and our own expectations about us can be a barrier to knowing ourselves? No, I honestly don't think so. I don't think so. I think it's. I'm going to give you a story that maybe helps you out in this question. Help me out. Help me. Help me. So that's why I'm telling the story. Um, One time, many years ago, I was working, and a friend of mine is an artist, and he built a piece. He called it the Narcissus, and so it was like you put it something in your shoulders, and it was like let's call it a helmet full of mirrors. Okay, full of mirrors, but they were built in a way that you could see all your head, your face, places that you never saw before. And one time I asked him to bring, if I could have that for one of my courses. So I took that. I took that with me, and I took it. I had that maybe for, I don't know, for 6 months working with groups. And the interesting thing is that people could not stay with that more than some seconds. And so what I want to say with this is that most part of the times, and I'm going to make a statement here, we are really afraid of ourselves. We are afraid of our reactions. We are afraid of what we'll be doing. So the self knowledge, the curiosity about ourselves, is nothing to do. The level of that curiosity, I think, is nothing to do with others. Is totally our own business. Is totally our own business, because I think most part of people are really scared of seeing themselves as they are. Um, you know, is a saying in India that says you only accept fully yourself when you accept all the sounds of your body. Get it? Get it? We tend to hide. Um, we tend to hide the things that are not so pleasant, right? We tend to do that, and sometimes not even with ourselves. So I think the main thing is that we are most part of the times very, uncomfortable on seeing ourselves as we are. And when I think now this is a moment that I'm getting right now with this question. Thank you so much. Um, because one of the connections that is coming to my head right now, and I didn't do before, is that maybe that's it. Maybe we are so wanting to control our triggers because when a trigger comes, we get that information about ourselves. Like, oh, if I get the trigger, this still matters. Or if I get this trigger, this matters for me. And this is a value that I want to operate. But maybe I believe my own expectations is that should not matter anymore. And I think this happens. Think with me, yeah? I'm thinking live now. Um, I think this happens also, and much more with families, right? The idea that I should not feel like this anymore about my father or my mom or my aunt or even my family, right? Because I'm not living here anymore. But suddenly the trigger comes and I'm like, oh my God, I'm still, this still matters. And now we'll prefer that didn't. You see what I'm going for? Oh, thank you for this question because this made a new click here. So the thing is, triggers are, and I'm going to repeat it because I think is important. Triggers are showing us what matters. And maybe the main question for the change is to say, how do I want this to matter? How do I want to make this even more valid for myself? How do I want to make this even more relevant in a good way, right? How do I want to make this even more important, but in a way that means something positive for myself? I hope this makes sense because I was now producing a thought that I will probably explore as a promise. And I'm going to explore, and probably in the next newsletter, you will see and read the reflection of that. So this was my main message for today. And how can we use triggers to really change and not stay on this idea that I don't really feel that is healthy, that triggers are to be all solved. Okay. I don't believe that, and I will not incentivize you to do that to yourself or to your clients. If Sorry, I'm reading here. Is our business that perhaps we have given to others? Yes. Is our business that we put in the hands of others? Totally that. Yes, yes, yes. So if you don't have any other question or remark, I want to appreciate you. Thank you, thank you. And thank you for your help because your questions really triggered something here. That's what I like. So thank you so much for being with me again today. And I hope that for the next week, maybe what you could do as a personal task is to say, okay, let me get the triggers, let me observe what still triggers me, and ask yourself, what matters when you get that trigger? What is there? What is the value? What is your personal view and perspective that this trigger is probably smashing or touching? So do that exercise, because again, you don't want to give up on that. You want to gain more possibilities of using that to maybe change the world, change your family, change the relationships that you have. So see you next week, and share with me along the week how this is going, and expect the the continuation of this subject on the newsletter. That if you don't have it yet, please make sure that you get it, because it's a different type, is a different way of exploring sometimes the topics that also come on the podcast, but it's also something that you can have and can read and stay with you. Okay. Thank you so much, and have a great weekend. See you next week. Take care.